Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're talking about and kind of comparing the Canon EOS R, the newly announced EOS R, with the Nikon Z6 camera. And we're just going to kind of go over the spec sheet. Unfortunately, that's all I have access to at this time. But yeah, we're going to go over that. I'm going to talk about my first impressions about the Canon EOS R. And we're just going to kind of just have a little discussion today. So hope you stay tuned. Let's get to the content. So Canon has finally announced their EOS R camera officially. It is their first full-frame mirrorless camera. And yeah, we just got this yesterday, and a lot of people are, curious about this camera. A lot of people are saying similar to the Nikons, it's not really a pro camera. There's also rumors that Canon will release a more pro full-frame mirrorless camera by the end of the year or early 2019. And so we don't really know what to think, but right now we're living in the present, so we're going to go off of the EOS R, this mirrorless camera that we have here. So we're going to compare this camera now, spec-wise. Like I said, I don't have the cameras in hand. I wish I did. But we're going to compare these two cameras via their specs. So let's look at this, okay? So both of the cameras have new mounts. The Canon is now a RF mount, and the Nikon obviously is the Z mount. The RF is 54 millimeters, I believe, across, and the Z mount for the Nikon is 55 millimeters. They're both full frame, obviously. The Canon is 30.3 megapixels, while the Nikon is 24.5 megapixels. And the interesting thing is, I think I heard that the Canon's is actually the 5D Mark IV's sensor. So that's really interesting, or at least it's a very similar sensor to the 5D Mark IV. Some of the other things we can look at, they're both CMOS sensors. They both do RAW and JPEG and all of that, the typical stuff we know. They have the bit depth of 14-bit for RAW. They each have a dust reduction system. The Canon takes SD, SDHC, SDXC cards, and I believe they take UHS-2 cards, while the Nikon takes an XQD card, which technically is the faster card. Not as popular, but it is the faster card. The Nikon has IBIS, or I think they're calling it IBVR. So basically it's a sensor shift. So the sensor is actually on almost like a little gimbal, and it's kind of moving the sensor around. Whereas the Canon's, it doesn't have IBIS. It does have digital 5-way stabilization though. So it's digital. Make your own thoughts on that. They both do 4K at 30, but I believe the Nikon does full frame 4K 30, while the Canon does have a 1.7 crop factor when doing 4K mode at 30 frames. But they both have H.264, so that's very nice. Now the Nikon, it'll do 1080p up to 120 frames. The Canon will only do 1080p to 60 frames, and they can do 120 frames, but only in 720. Really interesting to me. I would have thought that Canon would have put 1080 at 120, but I don't know. It's kind of weird. I really don't know why that is. Guess you'll have to figure that out or ask Canon. Going to the autofocus system, the Canon has a hybrid system. It's 5,655 autofocus points. It's a lot of autofocus points. Well, the Nikon has a phase detection system that's 273 points. And so that's really interesting as well. I'm not sure what that means, the 5,655 points. It seems like a lot. A lot of people have been really confused by that, so hopefully as we get more details about this camera, maybe that will be clarified even more. Going down to the viewfinder specifications, obviously they're electronic. They each have the same pixel count at 3.69. Also, we have very similar coverage, 100%. The Nikon's magnification for the viewfinder is 0.8, while the Canon's is 0.71. The diopter adjustment is the same, -4 to +2. And the rear screens are 3.15 for the Canon and 3.2 for the Nikon, both at a resolution of 2,100,000. Okay, let's talk about exposure for a minute. The Canon's natively goes from 100 to 40,000 and can be extended from 50 to 102,400, while the Nikon's does a 100 to 51,200. So the Nikon's a little bit better as far as native ISO goes. Exposure, EV -3 to EV 20. The Nikon does EV -4 to EV17. The Canon does 8 frames at 30 megapixels for up to 47 frames in RAW format, while the Nikon will do 12 frames at 24 megapixels. So, I mean, if you really need a lot of you need a lot of frame rate, the Nikon's going to be better in those terms, but I think the buffer's not that great on the Nikon, so I don't really know. And Canon's battery they're using in this is you can use one LPE6N rechargeable battery, and the Nikons are using the new EN-EL15B batteries for these cameras. So yeah, there's pretty much all the specs you really need to know for the most part. I don't know. Personally, my impressions of the Canon, I'm actually slightly disappointed. I was starting to get really excited about it because I thought, man, this looks really good. You know, we hadn't heard about IBIS yet, but we were all assuming they were going to do that. And for me, with the Canon, if they do release another, I guess, considered pro mirrorless camera, if they do that and they put IBIS in that, that's not really going to make much sense to me because they're still releasing lenses for this RF system that have IS in them. So I'm not really sure where they're going to go with that. It's going to be interesting within the next few months to see what's going on as far as that goes. But anyway, I was disappointed. I was totally wrong. I did a video on the Canon, like, oh, this could kill the Nikon, you know, the specs we're looking at now, blah, 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 blah. Well, I don't think it killed the Nikon, and in fact, I think the Nikon overall is a better value. It's still overpriced. Both of them are way overpriced in my opinion. You're looking at a $2,300 for the Canon R, and if you get the adapter, with the Nikon, you're getting it for $2,150 basically. So, I mean, the Canon's still more expensive without the adapter, and if you get the adapter, it's $100, and that would bring you to $2,400. I guess I should also mention that both of these cameras will do a C-Log or N-Log 10-bit HDMI out, so that's good for both Nikon and Canon. As far as Canon's lenses, you've got a 28 to 70 f2, you've got a 35 1.8 IS, and you've got a 24 to 105, and I think they have a 51 too. Compared to the Nikon, you've got the 24 to 70 f4, you've got the 35 1.8 and the 50 1.8. I think Canon killed it with the lenses as far as, you know, putting out fast lenses right from the start. Nikon, I think they kind of blew it in the lens department there. They should have released better lenses in the first place. But the other interesting thing I've personally found about the community reaction, at least on YouTube, about the Canon compared to the Nikon, is that, especially the bigger YouTubers, it seems like they're apologizing more for the Canon than they were for the Nikon. One channel in particular, they did this kind of preview, whatever you want to call it. And basically, they kind of said, well, the Canon only has one card slot like the Nikon, and, you know, that sucks, but blah, 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 blah. They didn't really hound on it, right? With the Nikon, they did a video similar to that one where they were talking about, oh, here was our thoughts initially on the Nikon. And basically, their thoughts were, oh my, you know, this is terrible. I can't recommend this to pro photographers doing event photography or like wedding photography or anything like that. So they kind of hounded on the Nikon more for the one card slot than they did on the Canon. And also, I feel like, personally, the Nikon honestly really isn't anything special compared to, like, you know, the other cameras on the market from Sony and Panasonic and whatever. But I feel like the Canon is, I don't know, it's kind of lackluster compared to the Nikon. I definitely think the Nikon, for overall value, is better. You may disagree with me, and that's totally fine. But yeah, I don't know. I think the Canon, I honestly am more disappointed about the Canon, and I was really excited about the Canon if you watched my previous video. I was really excited about the Canon, and now I'm not really excited about it because I think they kind of blew it. And especially if they put an older sensor, like if that is the 5D Mark IV sensor, it's an older sensor. I don't think it's a terrible sensor, obviously, but it's an older sensor where the Nikon's is a brand new 24.5 BSI CMOS sensor. I don't know, kind of a toss-up between these two cameras. I'm curious what you're going to get. Are you going to stick with Nikon or Canon and upgrade or get one of these cameras? Are you going to say this is the final straw, they messed up terribly, I'm switching to Sony or Panasonic or whatever? I'm just curious to know your thoughts, so please let me know in the comments below what you think about these two new cameras. Guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions or anything like that, put them in the comments. And like I said, I want to know your thoughts in the comments below. Please subscribe and like this video for more content like this on this channel. And if you don't mind sharing the video as well, that would really help this channel grow and continue to sustain itself. So thank you guys for watching as always, and have a great day. Bilingual out.